It's a lender question. I don't think so, though, because it just shows his pay and, I mean, what goes in, what goes out is what they're looking at. So monitoring his debts. All right, so we are live. Let me shrink that down. And we'll run through market updates first. All right. This will be quick then if there's nobody here to ask too many questions. All right, so this week we launched one home. If you haven't noticed yet on your searches, when your clients go in, it should have prompted them for a login if they wanted to opt in for SMS text. That's the one thing you needed to get with them. But now their portal is now one home. George and I are still trying to figure out how to get links again, because that's the one thing it eliminated is you can't just store links and send links. So that was one of the big changes. So, but now it's a secure portal between you and your clients where you're not sharing information. So I guess we're back to printing agent line again, which stinks because you can't, to send the pictures is a tough one. That was the one that I liked for showing comps. All right, market adjustments. If you've been watching TV, April was the slowest month, I believe, of the.
Yes, the slowest.
In 2 years, 3 years, 2 years now. Yeah. So that's
January, February business, or February, March business that didn't close in April. So
yeah.
That's the first quarter. Really
to linger through. So our inventory. Active coming soon. 4,743. Climbing, right?
I guess, yeah. Still.
Yeah. Because we were in the threes.
Starting to see a lot more available homes in the upper 300s.
Yep.
And the lower 400s than you would normally see.
Yeah. So your biggest battle right now is comping with Zillow, right? Because Zillow is still on that upward trend, and so your client's going to say, well, Zillow says my house is worth this. So those are the conversations I think you're currently having with going on to summer listings. So
and interest rates going up.
Yep.
So
you got to explain that and be conservative when you're pricing. They'll tell you, well, my house is worth 410,000 because Zillow says so. In reality, you got to explain to them what that payment is at 410, and that your actual comps are 375. If you get 400, God bless you. But your days on market are starting to increase because there's more choices for clients. Where there was one home for 20 buyers, now there's 6 or 7 for 20 buyers to choose from, right? That sounds about right on the ratio. I don't know. That's what I'm noticing as far as the increase in available homes. And George, I think you're correct. If we did 350 to 400, I think you're correct. 456 homes active or coming soon. That's a pretty wide array between that 350 to 400 range, which I think is our affordability, right? Right now at the 5% interest rates.
More people are going to drop down into that bracket too.
Yeah.
Interest rates.
Yeah. So you'll see the 400s. These guys that are in the say 400 to 425 range. 223 dropping down also into that range. So but that's what's coming. So that's why today, well, what did we do in April? They move my stats. So March, the closed sales was 4,517, and it dropped to 4,125 for April for the entire MLS. So it's a pretty big discrepancy considering last April we were at 4,873.
Yeah.
Dropped off a little bit, but then June perked right back up, right? So we should be looking for a perk back up.
We're coming into the meeting right
Yeah.
now, right?
June, July, and August, right? That's when everybody goes nuts for buying. All right, so let's go into alternative financing. So with the market shift and affordability rate changing, people are going to be looking for options for payments, right? You're coming out of a $1,800 a month apartment rental to a house that's going to be $2,600 a month, I believe, out of 5%. So say you wanted to buy one of these 1,800 square foot houses that are at 400,000 with taxes and insurance, you're roughly increasing your affordability up to 2,600. So they're going to be looking for alternatives, and I think we should have some sort of knowledge base on why these alternatives are available for them. So first ones that's going to start getting popular as our rates are fixed at 5% and 6% is the adjustable rates. Okay, what that's going to do is going to bring your interest rate down probably a full point, reducing your payment by $400-500, which is very enticing. So adjustable rates are traditionally short term. So the conversations I always like to have with the clients are, how long do you plan on using the property? Well, this one we're going to live in for 5 years, and then we're going to upgrade to a house with a pool or something like that. So if that's their plan, then maybe a 5-1 or a 7-year 7-1 arm might be doable for them. Or, well, I'm only here on a 2-year contract, and then I have to move elsewhere. So maybe a 3-1. So there's 3-1s, 5-1s, 7-1s, 10-1 adjustable rate mortgages. And what those do are they're fixed for those 3 years. Then they start adjusting, or the 5 years or the 7 years. And there's a couple of ways that they are adjustable. Most of them are going to have a fixed cap on what they can adjust for. LIBOR is probably one of the main ones that changes. LIBOR index is. Could give me a So they're tracking me. Anyways, that locked up. So adjustable rate mortgages are going to be amortized over that 30-year period. So you're still doing an amortization over a 30-year period. In turn, you're going to have a short-term fixed interest rate. So that's going to be the payment for, let's just go with 5 years. Let's talk about 5 years for now. Let's talk about a 5/1 arm. So the 5/1 arm that you lock in is fixed at 3.875. You know, that reduces their payment to X, Y, and Z. After the 5th year, it gets recasted. Okay. So they check at what the current rate is, and then they usually fix that payment for 12 months, 8 to 12 months, depending on what type of adjustable rate you have. Then the following year, it gets recasted again. So sometimes it can be beneficial because sometimes it'll cast lower, depending on what the current rate is at year 6. So, but what your clients are probably going to be concerned with, well, what's my payment going to be for these 5 years? Okay. If they need a longer term, then a 10-year is probably what they're looking for. But adjustable rate mortgages should become popular for people that have decent credit, but are more concerned about that monthly payment. I think lenders will start pushing those more, especially with people that have heavy car payments, just to bring them into the debt to income ratio level. I mean, if you can reduce somebody's house payment by $500 so that they can qualify, they'll probably push that. So team up with your lender and talk to them about what adjustable rates are. But as far as affordability, that's how we can keep buyers purchasing. And you should have some knowledge base on adjustable rate mortgages.
You say 3/1, 5/1. What is the one
That it adjusts after the year.
after 1 year?
Yeah.
But it's fixed for 5.
Yeah.
It's rated and it fluctuates for a year. It could be determined for 1 year after that. That's
Yes.
different. And then after that, another year.
Yep. And we do have a calculator for it. Here it is, now that it kicked me out of the LIBOR. So you can put in your price, your down payment, what your term is, what your start rate is, what your cap is, and then what's the maximum it will increase after the first interval. And you'll get those all from your lender, okay? So this seems about right though. If you were to grab an arm right now, 375, I think is what they have them at. And then they usually have a higher, your cap's going to be higher than what your fixed rate would be.
What kind of credit score are you looking at to be able to qualify?
They want decent because these are conventional loans. So you couldn't jump into FHA 580 with how you can get into an FHA at a 580 FICO. You'd probably want to be in the mid 6s for a decent rate, and then up above 7 for even lower rates. So, you know, it is higher your credit score, the lower your interest rate's going to be. Same with the ARMs. The better your ARM rate's going to be. When majority of the loans I was doing were ARMs in 2009, I want to say. They all stayed rather low, but you had somebody with an 800 FICO score, they were like selling 2.5% interest rates, short term, like 3-year, 5-year ARMs. Usually the 3 years were down in the 2s, and savvy buyers would take advantage of those.
Because how long does that really, it does this all the time. So
Yeah.
within 3 to 5 years, you're probably going to see another downturn in
Yep.
the interest rates.
And when the fixed rates dropped, the adjustable rates dropped even further. So people were styling with the adjustable rate mortgages.
And with the 2.5, 2 and 3/4 that we just left,
Yeah.
we're still doing adjustable rate mortgages.
Yep. Not as much because it was easier to sell the,
30-year.
yeah, the 30-year, because then it's just fixed for life. Yeah. So the other scenarios is your cash buyers now own properties free and clear. So let me go back into. So these are your adjustable rates. Loan term 30 years. Let me just run this so you guys can see the schedule. So this one has a rate change at month 12. Wait, how did we do it? All right, so this one changes at 6, so let's just compute. So the first year your rate will adjust on this one. And so this one we did for 1 year increments. So your first year is fixed at $1,296. Next year went up to $1,500, 12, and so forth. So actually, let me do a 3-year note, because that's generally the ones you're going to find. All right, 3 years, and then every 12 months it adjusts, right? And this shows it at, can you guys see it? 36 months, it's fixed at $1,300. And then the new rate goes to 5%, 12. Next rate is capped at a 0.25, so that the next year goes to 5.25, new rate 5.5. Just trying to give them worst case scenarios. If they have the flux, it depends on what type of adjustable rate mortgage they get and what indexes they're based upon. But this shows them what would happen to their payment if they didn't refinance after 3 years and just continued with a 0.25% increase every year. So it's not scary, but it does go up a couple $100 after year 5, right? Year 1's not so scary, it's easing into it. Year 3 goes up, year 4. And then it's capped. I think we have it capped at 7.5. So say you don't increase it, and down here when we get to the 7.5, which is fixed for the rest of the year, for the rest of the term. So you'll finish off your 203 payments at 7.5% if you never refinance. Say the interest rates go up to 10%. 7.5 is going to be a pretty good fixed rate, going into those latter years. And then they can see their balance here. For first-time home buyers, they have no idea what an amortization schedule is. So I always try to print one for a first-time home buyer so they can see where they're going to be at year 3. So at 36 months, it shows what their balance is at $263. So they've paid, a decent amount down. They put 20% down, and they've paid this loan down quite a bit. So it might,
you can make additional payments.
Yep, to bring it down. But this way, it's not so scary when they look at the entire. I mean, it's scary when you have to go sign these papers. But if you have it ahead of time, then when they get to signing, it's just bingo, bango, boongo, right? Because I already know because they're already prepared. You've spent 30 days preparing them. And I try to do it because lenders are doing so many loans that they don't take the time to go through it with their clients. So I think we have a more intimate relationship with our clients. That's why I always suggest with new buyers to explain how their mortgage is going to be. Plus, when you have that relationship that you've been honest with them, they tend to call you for refis when they want to sell their house and upgrade because they trust that you know what you're doing and they continue down that path. Because it's every 5 to 7 years, I think, is the going transitional rate around here. Sometimes in Vegas it's shorter, 3 to 5 years. But for the most part, every 5 to 7 years, somebody's calling me about selling their property. So any questions on adjustable rates and how that works, why it adjusts, and what makes it beneficial? Everybody good?
I mean, they're in it to make money.
Yeah, the bank's in it, always in it to make money.
Right?
But the mortgage is always going to be your tool. That's what I always explain to a client. It's like, it's not permanent unless you make it permanent. It's a tool for you to use financially through your life. So if we can shrink your payment to $1,300 a month versus $1,800 for fixed, and you can reinvest that $500, or you can drop it into IRA or savings, and you're disciplined, you'll be one step ahead of everybody else that's paying $1,800 a month.
Or just put that towards principal.
Yeah, or pay the principal down, pay off the other debts that don't matter, like your credit card debts or things like that. You never know what you need throughout life, but if you can show them how to save money doing it this route, and they understand it, they'll go that route or reinvest the $500. All right, so adjustable rates you'll probably start seeing more and more of in the next, let's say, end of the year when we're not selling as much, and the beginning of next year, because I don't think the rates are going to come down and people are going to be looking for alternatives. Okay. So with that in mind, how valuable is a 2.5% fixed rate on a property?
Good.
Pretty good, right? I think it adds a lot of value to the property if you don't need to pay it off. Most of the time people need to pay it off. So what I want to talk about is owner carries, because these are interesting to do. Does anybody do high-rise? Condos, mid-rise? As lending restrictions kick in, I'm noticing there's more restrictions on conventional Fannie and Freddie type loans in them. So say one person files a lawsuit in a high-rise tower, or here's a realistic one. The retail center below the high-rise tower filed a lawsuit due to faulty plumbing that the builder put in to the restaurant. That affects the entire building from loans. So therefore, now you can't get a loan conventionally in there until that lawsuit or litigation is finalized. So everybody that's involved in that condominium, the building, can't get a loan. So how do you get that seller who wants to sell his property sold?
Owner funds.
Owns it free and clear, owner financing, right? So Corey can spell finance. Same with it. look what your wonderful board has created for you guys. Now, keep in mind, we don't advocate for this because in Nevada, to make loans, right, or to sign off on loans, you need an origination license, an MLS license. So the way I view this is you're merely facilitating and giving instructions from the seller to the buyer. Okay, so both buyer and seller need to agree on this. You're not originating or creating loan documents. Okay. Financing addendum goes through. So say you have a $500,000 unit, a buyer that wants to put $100,000 down, but we can't get any financing in the condominium due to that litigation that's going to take them 3 years to finalize. Right? We talked to the attorneys. The attorney said, "Oh, it's going to take us 3 years to finalize. What can we do?" And you mentioned to the seller, "Hey, are you willing to carry a note for a couple years till that litigation's over with?" "Sure. How long do I have to carry it for?" "Well, it's going to take us 3 years, so we should write a note for about 5 years." "Well, can you carry for 5 years?" "Yeah, I can carry for 5 years." Okay. Now, what type of terms are you willing to carry out? That's where you guys have this discussion on the purchase agreement. So all this is merely instructions to escrow on how to prepare a note. Okay. So the it's going to be a seller's going to provide a promissory note secured by deed of trust of the same date and amount in the favor of the seller, to be recorded as escrow as a generally that'd be a first deed of trust unless there was two. Okay, so we're just going to do basic owner carry first deed of trust. Okay, so let's check mark that. Or the other option is buyer or seller shall provide a promissory note by deed of trust in the same. So generally, if you have a savvy seller and they have an attorney, the attorney's probably going to prepare the note to send over to escrow for review. Okay, just to cover themselves and making sure they're in the right positions. So you can check mark that. Or the first one, here we instruct escrow to prepare the note, which is what we're doing on the next portions here. Okay. So he's putting 100,000 down. So what's the balance? 400,000. Okay. And these are where your options change. Is it going to be a principal and interest? Is it going to be an interest only? Or is it just a straight note? Does everybody know the difference?
You're not purchasing all the payments applied towards the principal to be purchasing the house.
Yeah. So principal and interest is like our regular amortized note, and you can instruct this is the payment when you run the calculations, when it's due, and consecutively until such and such time.
Would the interest rate be competitive with what the interest rate is out there?
It can be anything you want it to be. I mean, it's negotiable.
Or is it risky to remove some of the higher interest rate?
Well, I mean, he's just sitting back, collecting on the money.
He's in the best position he can be.
Yeah.
He's got $100,000
Yeah.
deposit. If they fall,
He gets it right back.
He's got $100,000.
$100,000 back in his pocket, and he's making whatever you guys negotiate, 6%, 7%, 8%. Generally, when you do these, it's because of these scenarios. You can't get a loan on it. Something needs to be done during this period to make a loan on it. So if it's in the beneficial interest of both parties, this can work out. You can do an interest only. So say you like, oh, well, I want 8%. Well, can we do an interest only payment for 3 years or whatever? and that'll reduce paying down principal. So that $400,000 due whenever you guys put that balloon in, which is addressed further down the road. Straight note is, say you broke it down for 10 years at 7%, then it's just a straight note. And it will all be paid for by the time that 10-year period is over, or that 5-year period, whatever you guys come across. Okay. They also have you can address impounds. So if taxes and insurance are being paid or being impounded, you would say, yes, we want those impounded. Otherwise, those would be a separate tab for the buyer to take over. If the promissory note, if he's only doing it for 5 years, guess what? There's a balloon note, right? Whatever's due in 5 years, whether you amortized or you did interest only, this is where you would put the balloon payment that's due. So if it was interest only at 8%, and he was only doing it for 5 years, at 5 years, that's where you would instruct them to put a balloon payment. And so that $400,000 would be due after 5 years. Okay. All right. So prepayment. So if the deal's because the seller wanted to make an extra, 6 or 7%, and he wants to make that full interest on the property, then he would put a prepayment penalty. Or can I just pay this off without any prepayment? Are you okay with that? So that you need to check mark there so they know what to put it in the note. All this is instructions to escrow. They're going to create their own little first deed of trust and promissory note that will record onto the property. But this is where you give them instructions. If there's a late payment penalty, you'd put that in there. When the default would be defined, 5 days, 15 days. Failure to pay upon maturity. So if that 5-year balloon is due and you fail to pay it, what's the penalty, or what will the interest rate increase by X amount of dollars? If the seller gets notified that taxes haven't been paid and he has to pay forth the taxes, what are the rates on it? Alienation clause, due on sale. So this is generally on pretty much every promissory note and deed of trust. If the buyer were to sell it, this would be due and payable. So it wouldn't continue on to the next buyer. Okay.
Is there a deed of trust transfer, or that's only after the?
Yeah. So they'll create a note that will get recorded with the deed to the buyer. So the buyer owns the property, but there's a first deed of trust and promissory note. So when that buyer goes to sell, title will pull up this note and read it. And if there's an alienation clause or due on sale clause, then they'll be forced to red flag that in the preliminary title report that says that has to be paid. So that's when they start getting seller information so that they can order the payoff. Okay. It also goes that any interest divested is defined as that part of that alienation clause. So Preston carries the note. George wants to sell me 50% of the property. That would elevate or escalate the due on sale or alienation clause. Or 10%. George wants to give me 10%. Well, that will accelerate it. So, or I would have an uninsurable 10% or 50%. So that's where title comes into play. And that's why it's really important to read your title reports, just in case something like this is recorded against the property. All right, acceleration clause. In the event buyer defaults in making any of the payments when due, then in such an event, seller may, at their sole option, acquire the entire balance outstanding plus accrued interest immediately due and payable. So George defaults to Preston on the note. Preston has the right to say, hey, give me all of it, or else I take the property back. That's the acceleration. Request for notice. To protect the seller, if you're the seller and you're carrying the note, you want a request for notice. So Preston's making the loan for George. George comes to Corey and says, hey, can you loan me 50 grand? I'll let you record a deed against this property. Well, in order to record that deed, they're going to notify Preston, and Preston is going to say what? And go right back to his acceleration clause. You pay it all, and then you can do it. So again, I don't get any portion of the property. Insurable. Okay. Loan servicing. You're going to want somebody to service this, right? Because you're not going to want to run around collecting like a landlord because you don't own the property anymore. So how do we set it up? Who's paying the monthly service fee? Is it the buyer or the seller? Who's paying the setup fee? Are you guys splitting the setup fee? Or is the buyer paying for it? Loan servicing company. There's like 3 or 4 in town. I think U.S. Loan Servicing is the one I usually go to. And they're right up here on Trop. I think they're still up there. But they'll basically receive the money, pay the money, receive the money, pay loan servicing. And they charge a fee for setup and monthly service. Or waive it. So Preston wants to collect it on his own. Good luck to you. Can turn into a headache. If you have any additional terms, and then the reconveyance. On receipt of written request from buyer reciting that all sums secured by the deed of trust have been paid upon confirmation by the trustee and surrender of trustee. This is the one that gets forgotten a lot, and I've done a ton of these in my career. Is the reconveyance. Like they'll pay the note or the balloon's due at year 5, and that balloon gets paid. The seller forgets to record the reconveyance, which is eliminating the note and transferring it, reconveyed to the owner. So that usually is they'll add that in on this form. Insurance lien priority. So this covers the other stuff that if you're paying interest, you have to report that to the IRS, right? So if Preston's collecting 8% in interest from George, he has to report that he's collecting that 8% in interest to George, so George can write it off as his mortgage interest deduction. Okay. Insurance, in case the place burns down, you want to make sure you're covered for a year. Otherwise, everybody loses, right? Goes back to time is of the essence. So essentially, you're creating a contract and instructions. Here's where the disclaimers go that buyer and seller have been advised and have been afforded the opportunity to seek the advice of independent legal counsel in connection with signing, making this addendum in its effect upon each of them and their property, has carefully read and understood this addendum, are signing and making this addendum voluntarily, have not received any representation from escrow, title, realtors, agents, brokers about tax, legal, or financial consequences of this addendum. So we always say talk to your CPA, right? And that this addendum may have significant tax, legal, or financial consequences. Has been advised seller financing involves risk. We're advising you to seek independent legal and financial counsel and have the opportunity. So they're signing off that they've that opportunity. This is why it makes it safe for us to use it. But then there's the, do I have the professional competence and ability to help with this form, right? So make sure you understand it forwards and backwards, and that you advise them to talk to legal counsel and certified public accounting services. And once they accept it, then this financing addendum becomes part of your contract, because that's what it is. It's a financing addendum. And you give all that to escrow, and escrow prepares all your documents. Then now you got to do your due diligence and all the rest of the jazz that goes with it. Any questions on owner financing? Okay. Any questions on how to present that to a seller? So if your seller is open to owner carry and you put it in your financing, you're going to get a call from probably the top 3% of realtors that understand owner financing. Okay. The first couple calls, they're not going to be people that understand owner financing, but their client has told them to find an owner financing property for them, so you can vet them really quick.
Are there title companies here that do the servicing also?
No, there are. You missed that when you walked in late. There are loan servicing companies. There's three of them. What's that?
In Arizona, I do have one that the title company itself.
I couldn't find any escrow title that would do servicing. They usually do third party here. U.S. loan servicing. I think First American might, though, now that I think about it.
They charge
First American loan servicing, yeah.
$20.
So that's the only one I can think of. But there's a couple independent ones that you can go to. Mm-hmm. Yep. What was I talking about? Oh, if you put owner financing in there, you'll get calls right off the bat. Just do it for fun one day and see how many calls you get.
Renters?
Yeah, just
Hiring renters.
not hiring renters, just guys that have taken that seminar from Joe Schmo for $1,500, telling you how to own property without spending a dime of your money. You know which ones I'm talking about. Yeah. So you get all those calls right off the bat. Like, what do you want to do? And then for your clients, for the most part, you've already had the conversation. Well, I need $100,000 down, or I need $200,000 down. A lot of the time after I talk to them, they want 50% down. So, like,
You gotta have cash.
you gotta have some cash, skin in the game, and then you can start opening the conversation on the financing addendum. So, this one. I think that's all I'm going to get into for now. Because we're going to run out of time. But AITDs is another one that's an all-inclusive trust deed. And we don't have all day to go through all of those trust deeds. You're going to need a specialist on that. You're going to need a senior title officer. Basically, a senior title officer is a title officer that can write their own policies. That means they're approved with their company to write title policies. They don't have a title underwriter that they have to go through. They can write it their own and then have it signed off. So it's a senior loan officer. All inclusives is you're taking a current mortgage and you're wrapping it into your financing. So George has a note for $200,000. Okay, but he's got 15 years left on this note for 2.5%. Okay, he's going to sell his $400,000 property to Ruben, and Ruben's going to give George $100,000 down. Okay, so now I have George wants to finance the other 100,000. That makes sense. So, but he wants to keep the 2.5, but he wants to finance you with $100,000 down for 5%. So you're going to make money, still keep the loan from the bank. That is an all-inclusive trust deed. That's the premise of it. It can get complicated, it can get crazy, but that's the basics. George is going to make 5% on 400,000, and he's still saving the note for 2.5%. So it's where you put your balloons on it and accelerations on it. But again, on those ones, you need a senior escrow officer that can write their own title policies. Okay, and they are out there. They're out there, and you can find them, and they're usually working at a bigger one, like Fidelity or Chicago, or Lawyers, not so much. Is Lawyers Title still around?
Yeah. She asks for you all the time.
Does she?
You know.
Oh yeah. I'm like, I don't know.
That means you haven't sent her any deals.
I don't. I only do so many. You guys do most of them.
Not me. George.
Most of mine are, the latest ones have been commercial buildings. So I don't know. It always comes down to what the other commercial agent has come down with, and we usually pick Fidelity National Title just because everybody's familiar with it. So, all right. Any questions on financing addendum? It's there. It's in your book of business. Can you get more deals? Yeah. You just gotta know what you're doing. So read through it, get familiar with it. I've always found it helpful to read a actual deed of trust and a promissory note, which nobody really wants to because they're so big and long. But it's kind of the same. This is the condensed version from what you would get from a bank. Just the bank is just blown up into bigger paragraphs. So that makes sense. Just try reading a bank note, and that's all this is. Or carries are possible. You might need them for condo financing. Other announcements before we leave here and do questions. I'm moving this Monday meeting to Fridays. We're going to do Friday lunch and learns. So what my plan is to bring in lunch at 12:30 and do a class from 1 to 2. And then it just fits in with our Fun Fridays that we do. And I'll try to do a Fun Friday monthly, but we'll try to do these on Friday afternoon. And we'll still record, but I'm going to try to get a better setup, whether it's Zoom or just because it's hard to interact with the YouTube, but it's nice to have it archived. That's why YouTube's easier to archive. Zoom, like you need logins and storage space. So that's why I still like YouTube. YouTube's free. And it's easier to keep them there. But that's it. That's my announcement. And when I get back from vacation, that's when we'll start the Friday stuff. So mid-June. All right. Any questions or suggestions for the week? Anybody have new listings that aren't selling that need to sell? Open houses. That's why I like Friday, because like we can get everybody's new listings that they picked up during the week. Who needs open houses? I'm sure there's agents that want to do them.
Just off topic, but what's going on with the Lake Mead water supply?
It's going down.
Yeah, we're gonna have you can only water 2 times a week.
Is it? I just switched to 5 days. Were we not supposed to do that?
No, you're not supposed to do that.
Oh, dang
You're
it.
in Vegas, bro.
It's 3 days. It's
My grass is looking
no
good.
Sundays.
I don't know what your agents don't pay attention.
My son was out watering the grass on Sunday.
Well, the problem is that there's no water.
Yeah, there's no water. Most of my landscaping's desert anyways. I have like a patch of grass in the back. I'm not wasting water.
Be fine.
Yeah, water is all along the west coast in short supply.
Yep.
But we do have a water table below, it's just we're not replenishing anything above it. So
We got a lot of people moving here.
yeah, actually I was trying to coerce Danny into doing a water class.
The red class you did,
Yeah.
got all that water down there, but land use.
So the next couple classes coming up, I'm going to run through septic and wells, and then I'm trying to get Danny to piece together water rights course and how to, I guess, contract and who to go to for evaluations and transfers. So. But yeah, Danny's probably the leading water guy
There's water within this.
in this valley. What's
We're
that?
running down to have water.
Yeah,
We'll pull it from there one point in time.
well, basins are specific to certain basins. So
Yeah, but
we are,
eventually, if people need water, you're gonna get it. They don't let you tap into it, because once you tap into it, then you can't cut it off.
they're not transferable within basins, water rights. Yeah. You're talking about trucking water?
No, pipelines. Pipelines, not one.
That still rolls down that Colorado. Once it enters into this basin, then it becomes Colorado River Basin. And like Nye County Basin, Lincoln County basins are different basins. So they can only be used. And that's you have to drill into your underground water table. So
Then you go with you.
there's a lot that I don't know about water, but you know, I've been through some water deals.
I know some people who live in the water district.
Yeah.
Within time, we'll tap into it. It's just a matter of time.
Yeah, just pull it up.
Negotiate.
It's coming up at
Can't
the
let people die.
Springs Preserve right now.
Yeah. So it happens.
This water's below us, whether it's we're drawing from Lake Mead or we're drilling 2 miles down into the ground. That's the.
Sucking out from underneath somebody else.
Yeah. I watched a really cool. I like to watch the Science Channel. Engineering Marvels is one of my favorite ones. But in Europe, they drill for geothermal energy, so they go down, pass through the water,
That's
down
what we do
into-
back home too.
and some towns are realizing that once you pass that water table, the water comes up and starts permeating through certain perma levels of soil. It starts expanding. So then whatever's happening on top starts expanding and all your buildings start cracking that have been there for centuries. So it's interesting stuff. Trying to be green, but then destroying the community that's already in existence. Yeah. To try to build. So kind of cool stuff. But yeah, there's water down below, George.
That's good, yeah.
That's what I tell people.
That's where you have wells.
Until everybody starts moving out because there's no water, nah, just too many people moving in. So buy a bottled water company.
Yeah.
And water rights and just start bottling water. Start selling bottled water.
I was just at the last week at the Global International, Galmore or whatever.
Yeah.
The guy from Urban Development was there from the city. He was talking about them trying to build desalination.
Desalinization.